who has the momentum to win. Those of you watching, this is not about the Tonse Alliance versus UPND or whatever. These men are here by virtue of what they do. Like I said, Ambassador Mwamba is a political analyst and a journalist. Campbell is a leadership consultant. Let me begin with a very simple, straightforward question. We are not even going to make this discussion technical. We are just going to be simple and on the ground and take it to the point. If the election were held today or tomorrow, who do you believe currently has the momentum to win? And why? Brian Mundubile.
Thank you very much. If you asked me that question 2 months ago, I would have told you that President Hakainde Hichilema was headed for a win because of the fragmented opposition. At that stage, the opposition remained fragile and divided, and all efforts to unite the opposition, almost 2-year-long processes to unite the opposition, had failed. Remember, we had started with the United Kwacha Alliance. We went to Tonse. Then there were other initiatives. Some even ended up into political parties. Like Zambia We Want was also a coalition unity of the opposition. It ended up into a political party. There's a People's Pact that that was driven by Socialist Party President Dr. Fred Membe. That also collapsed, when faction members withdrew. If you had asked me that question 2 months ago, I would have said President Hakainde Hichilema was headed for victory. Orange Alliance, led by Citizen First President Harry Kalava, also failed to mount a strong alliance of opposition parties. It attracted minority parties other than the Citizen First. But we say one day is such a long time in politics, and we have seen the last 2 months that Brian Mundubile came from nowhere, and we'll discuss in details how the strength behind Mundubile has made him emerge as a leading candidate from the opposition. And this race has boiled down to a 2-horse race between President Hakainde Hichilema and Brian Mundubile.
All right. I'll ask you a follow-up question after Campbell responds to the same question. If the election were held today or tomorrow, Campbell, in your view, the way you see things, who would win the election?
I think we have to make a clear distinction between a structural advantage and campaign energy and momentum. I think that when you look at the structural advantage of incumbency that President Hichilema has and what it takes to win an election in Zambia in terms of organizing a network of not just ardent supporters, but people who can actually turn out the vote on election day. From an objective point of view, unless the ambassador knows something that I don't know, which I'm very curious to know, I think that the president still stands a very good chance of winning this election just because of the structural advantage that he has. Now, the question of whether we see the opposition energy that we are seeing materialize on election day is a totally different question. But for me, who's a consultant, I'm really interested in the numbers. I'm interested in the structure. I'm interested in how do we get voters to the poll and how do we actually, how does a party actually win an election? From a structural perspective, I think this is a +1 for the president. I'm yet to see something convincing from the opposition in terms of gathering that momentum from their rallies, turning it into a structure that actually wins the election.
So Ambassador Campbell says the opposition is not structured, even if Mundubile seems to have gathered the momentum him and Makebi have gathered. Let's hear your evidence supporting Mundubile's candidacy. What is the evidence you are putting across?
First of all, you have to go back to the history of our country. The most structured political party in 1963 was the African National Congress. But you saw the momentum come from nowhere. from a set of boys that broke away from the ANC, formed UNIP, and within 2-3 years, they were the leading factor, and ANC became a backroom party. We only needed to make government in 1963 when the first elections, almost democratic elections, were held. The next set of elections in 1968, you saw that UNIP was struggling because of the legacy issues of ANC held a stronghold, but he was also breaking away with friends like Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe and the others. President Kaunda was forced to form a one-party state by 1973. 17 years later, a movement emerged from nowhere, the call for multi-party democracy. Dr. Kaunda was the most structured party. It had countrywide party structures, offices,
Grassroots,
even companies. And they had the incumbency of holding on to state institutions. But a movement of the people came, and within few months, Dr. Kaunda lost that election to the extent of 76%, despite him being the incumbent president, one of the most respected elder statesmen in Africa and in the world, despite him running one of the most solid intelligence system, despite having all state-owned enterprises, and they were very, very strong at the time, supporting him, giving him vehicles, cars, and everything. The people's voice reigned supreme. Chiluba emerged winner. 20 years later, look at, 10 years later, 2001 elections. The MMD had been in power for 10 years. They had developed structures. They had held the reins of the state for 10 years. Of course, there was a rupture that happened within the party, which saw splinter parties like Heritage Party and FDD form. But MMD was extremely strong. A party from nowhere that had been formed 2 years before, 3 years before, Anderson Mazoka's UPND. No one saw it. The noise in the media was about FDD, Heritage, and the MMD. And UPND and Mazoka nearly won that election without even people recognizing how much a force was. Get us back to 2011. Michael Sata, first you see him grow in 2006, and then 2011. And the 2011 is symbolic because for the first time in 20 years, Zambia didn't have any serious debt, although, of course, Honorable Msokotwane had accumulated foreign debt from $500,000 to from $500 million to $3.8 billion. So anyway, we're low debt income. But look at the parameters. For the first time, we had the government that had built up reserves up to $4.5 billion reserves. The first time in almost 20 years. The inflation rate was now a single-digit rate, and the cost of living was one of the lowest. But our people rose. They were fatigued with the MMD. Didn't matter whether RB, Rupiah Banda had these good economic indicators. Our people kicked out both the MMD and Rupiah Banda and chose the man that they said was a one-man show, was a lone ranger. He didn't have systems and structures, Michael Sata. 2021, the UPND had been trying from 1998 to 2021. They were one of the most organized political parties. They never suffered any splinter during the entire duration of the UPND in opposition. I think Anderson Mazoka had set up a very solid structure that really, really helped the party come together. Despite the assault from the state, you saw UPND remained solid. But they were failing to cross over and win elections. In 2001, that was their strongest performance. 2006, they were reduced to the third party. Michael Sata's Patriotic Front took over. 2008, the presidential by-election, Sata came second, UPND dismally performed. 2011, Sata took over the reins, UPND was third. 2016, we saw the dominance of UPND re-emerging. And then 2021, they took over power. If you look at the the parameters, you recognize that UPND couldn't win power in all these years, over 20 years, for one simple reason, that the party didn't have a national character, the party was deemed a regional party, and that the leadership had failed to branch out to the rest of the country. And you saw the deliberate effort by Hakainde Hichilema beginning 2016, where he put one of the dominant political voices from the northern region, GBM, as his running mate, even bypassing the late Dr. Canisius Banda, who had been a loyal vice president from the East.
For many years, yeah.
Yeah, so those were deliberate efforts for Hakainde Hichilema to show the country that I am not tribal, I am a national in character. And in 2021, when the fallout of GBM and the other factions came up, he still picked a northerner in, Whitney Kapambwe Mtalena Lumango as running mate. This was a deliberate, she's not a very strong politician, but Hichilema needed to show that my party has a national character, that I'm a leader for all Zambians. And that's when he took over power. The PF was doing very well. I know we might differ here, but it was doing very well. It had built some of the best infrastructure in the last 50 years. It had built dams, power stations, schools, health centers and district hospitals, colleges, universities. There's nowhere where the PF didn't touch in terms of infrastructure development. But despite that good report, having bumper harvest even in periods of drought, you see that they built up even food reserves. The national strategic reserves was at their highest in the last 10 years by 2021. For them, their parameters were quite good, like RB's parameters in 2011. So when I say that Mundubile is such a force, I take the background and history of our country.
Okay.
That structures can be there, that you can have state institutions on your side. In the end, it's a feeling of our people. What is the state and feeling of our people?
And
so Rupiah Banda must have cried and genuinely cried because he didn't understand. If you looked at the economic intelligence report, Bloomberg, Reuters, everyone said he was headed for victory because he had built up foreign reserves, he had stabilized the economy, he had brought in foreign investment for the first time in 20 years. He was a good president. He was ahead. Someone even cited the UN Millennium Challenge goals, the development goals, that Zambia was among the top, I think, 5 countries in Africa that was headed to achieve most of the Millennium Development Goals. But what was the view of our people? The view of our people was that this is a corrupt government. It has failed us repeatedly. We gave it 20 years and they must go. This is a feeling the country, in my view, has about President Rupiah Banda, that was given an opportunity to run the country in the last 5 years. But what has it given us? Thank you, my brother. I said, debate, you can come in.
Oh no. I'm not actually here to debate. I'm not here to. I have no horse in the race, so to say. My perspective is really just coming from a leadership and analysis point of view. So I'm not here to defend the UPND or side with the Tonse Alliance whatsoever. But I want to kind of tack onto something that you have highlighted, which is very important, and that is the sentiment of the people. With all these elections that you have highlighted, the turning point was always a sentiment of the people. Yes, Kaunda had the structures and the machinery of the government, but it was a sentiment of the people. After 27 years of rulership and then going through a period of shortages and all kinds of economic upheaval, so there was this groundswell of momentum in terms of we need to change government. So MMD comes in and rides that wave, again, born of the people. When you look at 2001, and that is the election where Mwanawasa gets elected and the UPND comes to the forefront, that was also an election that could have possibly been a change election, but the people still sided with MMD and still gave them a chance. Again, it was the voice of the people. And when you come to 2011 and you talk about the election of Mr. Sata, the thing again that turns that election is the voice of the people. The people, yes, saw the economic indicators that were good, but the thing that lost MMD that election was corruption. The people felt that the MMD was corrupt to the core. So though the economy was doing well, yes, the economy was on a trajectory of growth, they said we cannot have corruption. So the people made that a change election. When you come to 2021, you also have the same situation happening. The economy was weakening. Zambia had for the first time defaulted in paying its debts, and the people had enough of cadreism. They had enough of all these unfettered kind of power that the Patriotic Front had brought into the public domain. Again, it was the people that rose and said, we need to give the UPND a chance. So the question, I think, and I think none of us sitting on this panel can answer this question until election day. Do the people of Zambia feel that what they have had in the UPND has been worse than what they had in the PF? Therefore, it warrants a change in government. Okay, so those are arguments that we can have as analysts, et cetera, but I think at the end of the day, the people would decide whether this is a continuity election or whether this is a change election. And again,
Kambo, sorry to cut you short. And to your point, that's the message that the opposition, the leadership in the opposition have been trying to put across, Ambassador, to say the opposition is the people. Okay? The opposition is the people. And you are saying that we cannot determine or say that will only be decided by the people at the polls, but we should be able to get to the bottom of certain indicators that will show us to say this is going in a certain direction. Let me raise one point, and the two of you, of course, can respond to this. One of the things people are trying to say to discredit Mr. Mundubile is to say he has nothing to show for his leadership. Okay? He was, of course, he was member of parliament, leader of the opposition in the House, minister in which province? He was provincial minister. Northern province, yeah. And people are saying, and then they try to compare him to HH and say, even before he became president, he was a successful businessman, blah, blah, and all that stuff. So let's try to use those two things and see whether that holds as at 1st August 2026. Does that hold?
Why? Well, if we are going to assess leadership and look at track record, then yes, we should have a debate on that, right? So you have a businessman who had a proven pedigree in the private sector and rises to the presidency and actually proves to be a good economic manager, gets us out of default and puts the country back on the path of economic prosperity. Now, we can have an argument on whether or not that, and I think this is where the UPND is having a problem communicating when it comes to their economic successes. And we can talk about that later. But when we look at the track record that he has, both in the private sector and in government, and then looking at what Mr. Mundubile brings to the floor in terms of his leadership pedigree, how did he perform as a member of parliament? What does he have to show for it? We already have him embroiled in scandal, for example. The case, I guess, is still being investigated. But basically, when we look at leadership and what we are looking for, is he the person to take over from a President HH who has shown that he can manage the economy, and not only manage the economy, but put us on a path to growth, right? And then there's also the question of how is he casting the vision? What is his vision? Where does he want to see the country in the next 5 to 10, 15 years? What is he actually giving us as a direction for the country? All those are messages that, of course, the opposition would have to work out. But from what I have seen so far, in terms of if we're comparing track records, the president holds water on that. I think he has proven as a private citizen and as an economic manager as a president right now to say that he has the chops to actually lead the nation. So, of course, Ambassador knows Mr. Mundubile better than I do, so maybe he might speak to that.
I'll put it this way, Ambassador, to you, the same question. Do the people really care about that, the track record?
So I love history. Then it helps me cast the future and give analysis. In 1963, the people of Zambia, Northern Rhodesians, just say Zelensky must go. They didn't want the argument. They knew who must go. Then they began to choose who should stay. And that has been the pattern. In 1991, people said UNIP must go. Kaunda must go. It didn't matter. Kaunda put up an argument. Colleagues, look at the people that wish to replace me. They are mandrax dealers. They are inexperienced. Chiluba has never even been in government. And he used to disparage, Chiluba was a short man. He says, how can a 4-foot man replace a 7-foot man? Come on, it's a joke.
A unionist.
Look at 2011. People said Sata is a madman, really. Look at the distinguished diplomat, family man in Rupiah Banda.
But Sata was underestimated, but go ahead.
My point is, Zambians first decide who must go before they decide who should replace that one who's going. And that has been the pattern of our country.
Zambians first decide who must go.
I have a podcast, and probably you have found at least once in your lifetime to watch it. If you listen to the callers, especially when I came to the USA last 1 year, is the rejection on every call was against UPND and President Hakainde Hichilema. Their feelings from my podcast has been that, look, the man could be a good man, but he has divided our country. They didn't expect such an educated man to step into politics of regionalism and tribalism. They didn't expect that a distinguished man like himself, who's run corporates and companies, that could even practice tribalism and the division then that he has spawned in the country. That has been a very big shock to our people. And then, of course, the state of the economy. Well, it hasn't been kind to President Hakainde Hichilema, especially that he fashioned himself that is Mr. Fix-It, that is an economist, that is educated, that has run successful companies before, and therefore running the country was going to be a piece of cake. But this is where the biggest failure has been. From the point of view of our people, we are running the longest cost of living crisis in our country, I think since time immemorial. And if a price of millimil jumps from 90 kwacha and 120 kwacha to up to 400 kwacha, our people don't understand. Whether you are subsidizing that millimil or not, our people just can't bear that, especially in an economy where it's highly informal and there are few formal jobs. And then there are no economic opportunities where people can draw loans, advances, or any cushioning empowerment schemes. There is none. So our people have felt, I think the issue of cost of living crisis is one of the reasons they kicked out the PF. Is that things were very expensive. So other than the cadarism, the default issue doesn't affect our people. It's you and me who can analyze it. But to our people, if they have electricity, they have water, and if things are running, that's the measurement of the economy to them. But one of the reasons the Patriotic Front was kicked out was that the economy was so bad. Now imagine how worse the economy is 5 years later. Look at the cost of living. Look at the statistics. Just a tiara, the food basket. It was at 8,400 kwacha in 2021. It's sitting at 12,500 kwacha 5 years later. Even just the cost of all basic essential foodstuffs, whether it's millimil, whether it's cooking oil, and issues like, economic issues like fertilizer, and cost of electricity and other things. And then the biggest dampener to President Hakainde Hichilema is his ludicrous campaign promises in 2021. He promised heaven and earth. To the extent that even if Hichilema has delivered something like CDF, free education, or is beginning to stabilize the economy, it looks minuscule, very small in comparison to what he promised. So his own campaign promises have now, 5 years later, come to haunt him. He has come to the people of Zambia. He has come to the people of Zambia making new and fresh promises. When he said the cost of mealie meal will be reduced to 50 kwacha, that the price of fuel will come at 12 kwacha, that fertilizer will be selling at 250 kwacha, and that
the price of fuel come down. Was it yesterday or the other day? Did they bring the price of fuel down? I think
they did. But the trouble is, you have to look at 2021. What was the price of fuel? It was 17 kwacha.
Mr. Mwamba, going based on your argument, if you're making an argument based on just pricing, then a Zambian can say, well, when the PF came into power, the dollar was this much. When they left, it was this much. When they came in, the price of mealie meal was this much. When they left, and all those statistics are on the high end. My point is this, and I know you're a politician. I'm not.
Just before you finish, let me make something very clear.
I gave you the time, sir.
We agreed. I'm going to give you a lot of time. I just want to clear something.
No,
I thought he introduced me as an analyst and diplomat. I'm not here coming as a Tonse Alliance or PF.
No.
I think I've been called as an analyst, and my facts will not favor anyone but the truth.
All right.
So I just wanted to clear that.
Okay, fair enough. What I guess what you're making is a political argument, right? Well, you're from an analyst's point of view. What I'm most interested in for me when it comes to the economy is what are the drivers of the economy? And you have to also understand that Zambians experience the economy in two different ways. There's the urban economy and there's also a rural economy, okay? When you look at all our change elections in Zambia, for example, it is the urban areas that lead the charge to say that we need change because the economy is not doing well. And the reason this happens is because the urban areas are the drivers of the economy. When you look at the majority of our GDP, it is generated in, or the business is really done between the Copperbelt, Lusaka, other urban areas, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I was making this assertion to somebody who said, how come things have improved but people are not feeling it? I said, if you're going to be realistic as Zambians, you have to understand that cost of living will not begin to come down until Zambia begins to post double-digit GDP. That is just the way it works. When we look at China, how was China able to lift people out of poverty? It's because China was always producing a GDP north of 10%. So yes, great. Our GDP is on the rise, but it is not yet enough for the urban areas to feel the effect of that GDP growth because we're not posting double-digit GDP. So when you look at this economy, and I'm not under any illusions, as somebody who's always in Zambia several times, the economy is not the best when it comes to urban areas. Things are tough. Things are expensive. And I think that the UPND would do well to acknowledge that fact. Things are not where they used to be, but we are going somewhere, right? But when you look at rural areas and when you just look at some of the effect of some of government interventions, whether you're talking about social cash transfer, you're talking about CDF, you're talking about other interventions that they have made, the rural areas may have a different view on the election, right? But that does not negate the fact that cost of living is still high. But to say that the UPND or Mr. Hichilema himself has not fulfilled his campaign promise, he was making outlandish campaign promises, then somebody will come out and say, what about your Mr. Mundubile? He's also making outlandish campaign promises, promising excavators and promising to cancel debts and promising to cancel people's water bills. The question becomes, how is that a coherent economic message that actually leads the country to double-digit GDP growth that reduces the cost of living. You see, so for me,
so the answer is very simple.
Can I just finish?
Oh, I thought you were paused.
Oh, no, sorry. So for me, when I'm looking at both camps, I'm looking at the UPND and saying, okay, so how do you convince a Zambian in Ndola who is saying the cost of living is still high? Okay. As the UPND, what is your argument to that person? Things are not where they used to be. Things have improved, but I'm not feeling it in my pockets, to borrow Mr. Sata's words. And then for the Tonse Alliance, great, you're making all these promises. My question to you is, how are you going to pay for it? Because if you are going to say that we are going to do all these things, where is the money going to come from? Basically, the question is, what is your plan to grow the economy to double-digit GDP growth so that the cost of living begins to come down? Those are fair questions to ask of either party. But to sit here and be disingenuous, I cannot sit here and be disingenuous and say that things have not improved. The question is, have they improved enough to warrant a second term for the UPND? Or are people saying, this is it? We need change and give the Tonse Alliance another chance.
Okay, Ambassador.
No, it's very simple. You know, you need to carry all our people to a certain education level to have an informed electorate. If you see, if you study President Hakainde Hichilema's campaign messages from 2006, he was extremely capitalistic, free market, free enterprise. By 2011, he begins to see that a good economic argument can't win you elections. He begins to become populist. 2021 was his worst case because you now can't trace who President Hakainde Hichilema is. He began to promise things. He knows that if he runs a free market, free enterprise, that the price of millimil can't come down to 50 kwacha. He knows because there are so many factors that have to go in to bring the price of millimil at 50 kwacha. But despite his knowledge, he promises it anyway. So the Hakainde Hichilema of 2006, who's rooted in realism, becomes aware of the realities of politics. Let me take another example. Member of Parliament. A member of Parliament is a mere legislator. He can't build a road. He can't build a bridge. He can't bring water to you. He's a member of Parliament. He's a legislator. He spends 9 months in Lusaka, in Parliament. But have you witnessed the campaigns of our MPs? They promise that they will dig boreholes for you, that they will build a crossing point or bridge for you, that they will bring the road to you. Some even promise, health centers and schools. It's something that an MP cannot do. They promise what they cannot do. And our people have become wise. They've made the issues of election transactional. And that is where even the issues of vitenges, money, contributions, even to a meeting, transporting people comes in because the election has become transactional. My brother, you are very hopeful that a narrative of a good economy or a narrative of the vision of our country should then persuade the voter to vote for you. I've been in elections where you have a very good candidate and they're just walloped by a guy who comes with a stack of money from Lusaka 2 days before elections, distributes ama 20 kwacha, ama 50 kwacha, and the good man with good vision loses elections. So you have now...
That is now our problem as a country that we need to solve, isn't it?
Yes, that's why I started with the issue of education. Until you have empowered voters who are working, who are educated, who are living well, who can make decisions not from the stomach but from their head.
From their head, yeah.
So you see the outlandish promises by President Hakainde Hichilema in 2021. Even now he's making outlandish campaign promises